How's you got drum heads? Right, for today's show, no messing about. Hopefully, we're going to bring on a big fish.
Yep.
Um, I think MD with any kind of marbles in their heads going to think this guy is massive.
Oh yeah.
So who have we got? Who have we got here?
This
Chase.
this guy's got some serious credentials. He stepped onto the scene in something like 1989, became world solo junior champ. He
All
then
right.
went on to win All Ireland champs, Ulster champs numerous times.
All right. I think I know who
World's
we're talking about here.
the world's grade one drumming prize,
Right.
something like 7 times. He's got in 2023 he was the UK senior solo champion,
Right.
and he also holds something like 25 other major championship titles across Britain,
Ridiculous.
Europe,
Ridiculous.
Scotland, everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And if you were a purveyor of premier products, you'd also know him as the marching specialist.
Oh, I think I know who exactly you're talking about. Are we talking about
Take a
Mr.
guess.
Stephen Creighton?
That's the one. Let's get him on.
That guy's fast. That guy is fantastically massive.
Great Hans.
Great horns. Superb horns.
Let's get him.
Hanging a little bit, but I'm all right.
Is that right?
Did you have a night out last night? Did you have a couple of beers?
I'm not gonna lie to you. In the last, I'd say since COVID, myself and my wife have made a deal that we'd go out at least once a week together.
Brilliant.
Nice.
We spent most of our life rearing young children, and they're all gone bar one. And
Right.
time gets away from you. We realised that we've been living where we're living here now nearly 20 something years. And I
Right.
think we've been in one of the pubs about 3 times. So it just all happened to be a music bingo last night in our local steakhouse pub. So it was a bit of crack. Yeah, you can only imagine.
Finally getting to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat. One of my kids, the two of my kids is away. I've got 2 girls left, so it allows a wee bit more kind of free time, if you know what I mean. So you can you can indulge a wee bit more.
Yeah, sometimes you get into a habit of not going out, and you don't realise that you can go out and you should go out. When you hit our age, we don't. We look at it as we don't really have much time left, so we may as well
No.
enjoy it. So,
Listen, the blink of an eye, literally, it's the blink of an eye.
I know how
Get
it is.
all
I
in
know
when
how
you
it is,
can.
boys.
Stephen,
so.
Stevie, welcome to the show, and I'm loving the Evans head you've got at the back of you.
Oh, classy.
Classy, aye.
This or the bass drum?
The bass drum head up there.
The bass drum head up there, behind you.
Bass drum head, yeah.
On the wall.
There's a story behind them heads. Our bass drummer who retired last year, John Dunn, he's probably one of the most iconic bass drummers in the world.
Yep.
With the style that he plays and how he strikes that drum. But one of his biggest hates was having logos on drums. And he's not for having any sort of fancy heads with the band's name, email address, contact phone number, and all this kind of shit. So we had got those. They were a prototype for our band some maybe 5 years ago, just before COVID. I got a set in black with grey writing on it. I got a set in white with grey writing on it, and I presented them to John, and he just went, "No, not for me." I went,
They're going on the wall.
You're like, actually, look at this, and he's like, no.
"No." I thought he was going to get excited when he's seeing the detail, and because Evans do a great graphic presentation on their heads, and it's like a double skin. So it's like the front skin is like a laminate, but John's very much sound. He's anal about sound, and he reckons that the double skin causes muffled sound. He says the thinner the head is, the more vibrant the sound. So we have to agree with him. Even when he's playing his bass drum sticks, nobody knows what mix sticks he makes that he uses, because he covers them with tape. So he doesn't really like promoting products or get involved in that.
Right.
He just wants to play, and that's something that you have to admire him for all these years. That the temptations of designing his own stick, he just not interested.
Not into it. Wow.
No. John was a director of a company called Hicks Foods, general manager, and he was over about 300 people at one stage. and I don't think anything came into it financially where he was motivated by money. He loved the music, and right up until actually our new bass drummers that we invited to play in the band, good fella Paul, his brother plays in the band, Robbie. When I asked him, he couldn't tell me at the time, but his wife was actually only 4 weeks pregnant, and nobody, not his mother, father, nobody knew that she was pregnant. But at the same time, he couldn't tell me because she was due the day of the All Ireland Pipe Band Championships in Ireland. So it ended up that he said, look, Stephen, I'd love to do this. I've always wanted to do it. I told you, if John ever retires, he's local. He's about 6'3". He's built like a brick shithouse.
Yeah.
And he understands the music and the style. But unfortunately, his wife was due. So we had to sort of say, look, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Right? She might miss that.
Choose?
And it'll be just grand. So turns out she goes into labour the day before the All Ireland. And it turns out during the night, she still hadn't had the child. So I had to make the call to John. John had told me if he was stuck, he says he would help me out. So I rang him. I rang him at I think about 1:30 in the morning, and he said, leave it with me. He says, I'll ring you back tomorrow. So he says, see how it goes. She might have had the child, because Paul had said if she has the baby, he will, even on Saturday, he will come out and play.
He will just be straight out the door, kiss the baby.
Brilliant. That's commitment for you, by the way. Might not have a wife after that, but that's commitment.
Yeah.
I think it's more him trying to be a hero.
Yeah.
Because I knew damn well he wasn't getting out that door no matter what happened. So I made the call. I said, Paul, look, you sort out your wife. Stay there. I know you wanted to play in the All Ireland, but unfortunately, this has happened. What we predicted could happen has happened. So I rang John back, and John says, yeah, what time do you want me there for? And I said, well, we're playing at 3 and at 4. He says, right, I'll be there at 1. So he arrived at 1, put the drum on him, went in, played 2 performances like he had never seen before. And left, and became an All Ireland champion for
I
I think it was our 14th All Ireland drumming trophy. So
what
John
a story!
And believe it or not, Paul's wife had the child during the slow air in the medley. So
right, nice weekend.
A wee
birthing tune. Take it easy, sweetheart. Take it easy. Come in.
Absolutely.
So she was live streaming.
After all the ferocity, then all of a sudden,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a story and a half there for you. So
what was the name of the tune? Because that must be the baby's name now, surely.
Bull of Vogue.
Yeah, we go.
Stevie, congratulations, obviously, in winning, obviously, the massive accolade that it is the best drum corps in the world, right?
Yeah.
An amazing accolade. Again, right? So here's my question for you, right? What's better? Is it better the first time, or is it better kind of getting it back? What feels like the first time must be like, holy smoke, man, this is it. Big trophy, you know, the horns, and amazing. But was it better the second? You know, better like kind of
more pressure, surely.
Which is better, your first child that you have or your last child?
I know. Listen, I know. It's
you
a
can't
tough
choose,
answer, but
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll put it this way: the time we won the Worlds in 2006, we were a drum corps that was trying to develop into a good Grade 1 drum corps. And my task wasn't to win world titles when I took over the leading drummer's role at O'Toole's. Johnny Keogh used to be the leading drummer, and then a guy called Dean Hall, who was an Australian.
Yeah, Dean Hall. I've got all his scores.
Yeah, they're not that great. Well, anyway, Dean was the leading drummer there. He filled the gap between Johnny retiring and me coming in. I was the leading drummer at St. Joseph's at the time.
Yeah.
Which won a couple of world titles at Grade 2 level, and we got promoted to Grade 1. And the usual, didn't have the numbers. But Terry was struggling to find a replacement, and I was the one that was thriving in solos, because I was in every final at the World Solos in the senior level. He wanted somebody with that sort of commitment that he had. Terry was obsessed about music and about the style of the music. And he came up with this idea that we were struggling for pipers and they were struggling for drummers, that we'd amalgamate the two bands. So in 1999, we sat down, but the only big problem, again, coming back to bass drummers, was I had a bass drummer, Jim Gallagher, playing with me at the time, who was at practice every night. He was first in and last out. And then we had John Dunn, who was the main man at O'Toole's, same team, obsessed, at band practice first, last out the door, at every competition. If you rang him this morning, like I did, to play in an All-Ireland, he'd put the uniform on and go and play it. The problem was we had two bass drummers, so we had to come up with who was going to step aside. So we ended up, Jim did, he said he's not getting in the way. John is a far superior bass drummer. Jim actually tunes the drums for the band at the moment and has done for the last about 12 years in our band. He tunes the drums for Terry. So the bass drummer became very useful in a lot of other ways. Oh, but anyway, the first job I had when I took over was Terry's pipe corps were doing really well. Richard Parks was the pipe major of Field Marshal even back then in 2000, as you know. They were one of the biggest pipe corps, best pipe corps in the world we'd seen. And we got the chance to play against them in the north of Ireland, travelling up to play in these contests, because we don't have a grade 1 grade in the south of Ireland to play in. So the band was travelling to the north of Ireland to get some competition, circle time. And the first job I took on was to beat my own pipe corps. So nice. if we went in and had placements now of, when we were playing in majors, there was 12 and 13, 14, maybe even in the small majors, there was that amount of numbers, but at the Worlds, we had 20 at the time when they had to run a qualifier on for bands to qualify for the Worlds. But my first job was Terry was getting the 6s and the 7s in the pipe, and back then was that I wanted to get the same 6s and 7s because they were getting 13s and 14s. So the first thing I had to do was to beat my own pipe corps. So that was what my target was. So when I went in there and things started to progress really fast, people wanted to play in the corps. And remember, there's no players in my corps have a stardom, celebrity status. They didn't come in from bands that had won competitions. These all came from grade 3 and grade 4 bands, because that's all we had in the south. So I took in a young fella at the time, Mikey McKenna, in 2005, who became a very, very popular solo player on the circuit. Mikey was 13 years of age. He came from the Black Raven band. And I took another couple of guys then. One, Chris Johnson, Ivan Johnson, the bass drummer of the RUC, his son Chris. He's now the leading drummer of the band club at the moment. But he came down and played with us because he liked what he's seen. And over a 3-4 year period, we started to make really strong progress in our march, Strathspey and reels, which was probably one of the weaknesses in our band, purely from the fact that everybody loved our Irish traditional medleys, because Terry used to put some fine pieces of music together, and they were easy to write to and stuff like that. But the MSR was when we let ourselves down, and that was when the amalgamated MSR playing and medley playing together that we discovered that the band was struggling to break into the 6. So we focused on our MSR playing a lot, myself and Terry, our ensemble, and all that kind of stuff. And in 2005, we could see a huge difference. The corps became really big. We ended up with about 9 or 10 players. And I would say that in 2006 at the World Championships, I was the first leading drummer to play with 10 snare drummers. So you can blame me on the big chorus, probably. Jim was starting to take in the Jakes and the Blairs and the Graham Browns, all of these guys from around the world that were starting to fly in, and they were cramming weeks' works into their practices, I suppose, when Willie Kerr and Barry Wilson and Carl Ennis and all these guys they were the template of the corps, but he started to make his corps that bit bigger. And I just discovered in 2005 there was a huge gap in the grade 1 with dynamics. Shots used to be the big dynamic corps for And I said to myself, I've noticed that they've not really had that for the last 2 years since they brought in these flying players, that rehearsals seemed to me that they weren't what they used to be, and it was more about the talent and the, relying on good players to come over and sit in there and do the job. But the dynamics in some of the top corps have gone. And I said, let's go extreme here. So I focused on conducting in front of the corps really extreme dynamics, really, really light and really, really heavy. and playing with, as we say, putting your balls on the drum, basically, and you're putting it out there. It's risk for reward. So over time, at the start, it was a bit rough. Lads, when they were playing loud, played a little bit slower, they got a little bit broad. And when we were playing light, some of the light playing was a little bit muffly, and you couldn't really make out what we were doing, and there was thicknesses. So it took a while for me to go extreme until we found a happy medium. And we started recognised for being one of the most dynamic chords in the grade. So I knew we were.
You think that obviously that's a kind of double-edged weapon where you've got such a large core, right? So then it kind of triples your management kind of thing. You've got a greater amount of guys to manage. So therefore it kind of adds a lot more pressure to you as a lead drummer. That, you know what I mean? I mean, the good old 1980s days with about 4 or 5 drummers, and then you're like that, boom, I've got a massive core now. I've got different people, I've got different guys.
People flying in.
How do I kind of corral them, shepherd them, and do you know what I mean? And you get individuals, don't you? You've got guys in that core that maybe, do you know what I mean? How do you manage these guys?
Well, I had a guy who was a world director of a company. I won't mention names. He used to come to practice in a brand new Mercedes, and I had a guy who worked in a barber shop.
Yeah,
there's probably a difference of a couple of 100,000 a year in salaries, which them guys were coming and sitting around the table with the same sticks, same band, same concept, same focus, same drive to win grade 1, and there was no hidden agenda or private meetings behind the back with the guy who had the Mercedes and talk about the guy who was working in the barbershop. Anything we ever had was transparent and it was on the table. And back then we didn't have WhatsApp, but we had other methods of I suppose, communicating with each other. They all started to come in sort of, was it 2010? We started to see WhatsApp and all these group chats. But we used to do Skype sometimes with some of the travel players and things like that. But I think the most important thing here was to treat everybody equal and make sure everybody, when we were sitting around the table, whether you were this big hotshot somewhere or a young fella going to college, that everybody was on the same level. And that was something that we spoke about a lot, that there was nobody to be talking about who should be in the core, who shouldn't be in the core. That, you know, we had good players in the core that came to practice twice a week, and we had talented players who came once a month. Not all the time. Most of our players back then were mostly local, but when some of the guys started to show an interest, like Grant Cassidy and stuff like that, came in the core, it was there was a done deal with you know, I always picked them up at the airport and brought them to the house. They stayed with me. Same with Eli and Andrew now, who travel from San Diego and from Edmonton. So just not for me, even for my wife here, it was a huge commitment to be having those guys still, you know, feel at home. But when the call got bigger, the logistics did get harder, and every phone call and every text message that come on my phone, Jordan dinner, Jordan. Now it's not so bad because there's no kids here sitting around the table, you know, having their dinner when all the phones hopping, the kids are away. But when I was younger, it was difficult because, you know, you get a phone call, Jordan, your dinner saying, "Hi, Stephen, look, I'm struggling to get over the band practice tonight. I'll be there, but I'm going to be late. I'll be there as soon as I can." To the guy who tells you, "Stephen, I'm down here at the school. I thought to come down early. And where will I get the keys to the school?" Like the small little stuff that used to constantly eat away at you, where your band practice was from 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock, but you were organising it from 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
You were talking at 10 o'clock. I come home here and my wife would say, "How did practice go?" And I just open the can of worms. You start talking about who didn't practice, who didn't have the stuff off, what changes you made, all that kind of stuff. It was nightmare.
Listen, you're quite an imposing guy, right? Obviously, I've told the story about how I was like kind of dead nervous to ask you to come on the show, right? It was like, well, I'm no mental or anything like that. I thought you were going to give me a clout or something. But
you should have, by the way. You should have.
I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, how do you deal with folk coming up and asking you random stupid questions? But apart from that, so see, like when you go back and you talk, you know, obviously you talk it over with your wife and she's like asking you know, you might not have a practice that's went the way it's went in your mind. It's went to go, right? So how do you deal with that disappointment, or how do you no discipline the core, but how do you deal with trying to kind of improve what you're wanting out of people? Do you know what I mean? Is it? I mean, because you're in a kind of an imposing guy. I know you're a bad guy, but just because you've got quite a big figure, do you think that you're kind of it's a kind of I don't know, like a kind of authoritarian type thing, or do you think you've got like kind of wee special kind of mechanisms that you play kind of like a kind of Man United type thing? You kind of say things to people that goes like that. I need to kind of up my game here.
Get the
Do you know
best
what I mean?
out of them, and
I need to
In
kind
the
of I need
beginning,
to
that
work
wasn't
harder.
there. In the beginning, people used to think they could be good enough playing this core because they had an ego. Now, guys won't even bother asking to join the core, say to unless they know that I'm ready for this. Like I'm after rebuilding that core probably 4 times, and I've been lucky that I've held on to the same template of players for the last 20 years. I've 3 of them left. One of my biggest losses was probably Derek Doyle, Butch, silver-haired guy. He's now the leading drummer at Black Raven, plays a kit.
Yep.
He's one of the best sought-after percussionists in this country because he's orchestral trained, concert trained. He's spent most of his life in the army as the #1 percussionist, but he was a pretty well disciplined snare drummer in pipe bands. And when we do all our concerts, he would come in and play one. But generally, I'm not. People think that I have this aura about me being very unapproachable or very intimidating, but I'm not. That's a game face for competition days, and I've learned over the years that by accepting defeat sometimes makes you weak. So my challenge to me was to toughen myself up that way. Listen, I came from a place in Dublin, Ballyfermot. I have 6 brothers and 4 sisters. There was always fighting in the house. There was always fighting in school. I lived in a place when you went outside the door, you had to fend for yourself. So I'm quite tough and streetwise that way. But when it came to pipe bands, I'm only interested in the music. The politics that comes with pipe bands, sometimes you need that fear, not just with players, but with adjudicators, organisers. I have a terrible habit of just doing whatever the hell I want. And I don't do it through ignorance. I do it through, it's my hobby. And the last thing I want now is somebody telling me what to do. So I will do it within reason. But musically, presentation wise, I do it my way and my way only. The core have been told that when they come in, I have great guys in the core who have great ideas. But at the end of the day, I'm the boss. So if you're not prepared to accept that, there's a big gaping door over there. Take yourself through it and go home. So we have had challenges over the year with some players where some guys were much better than others, but they were the guys that were always the ones that had a natural gift to play the scores. And then you had the guys who had to work really hard. And of course, when you get the gifted guys on board and the chorus on song, everyone that has a gifted natural ability to play the stuff is trying to find reasons why we shouldn't be playing the guys who are struggling. But they're the people that they were the glue of the drum corps, because they're at every practice, they see every change, they see every development of every score, because every score that when you write and put it on paper and bring it down to the band hall, that's only the starting blocks of the score. There's so much has to go on. You've got to put chips, as might call it, 40 parts. You've got bass and tenors. Years ago, you had question and answer. Now you have a full cover of. You have every note on the chanter covered by being able to use the rhythmic rhythms of the score to the notation of the melody. So, and then you've got counter rhythm, which a lot of people don't really use a lot, but where you can counteract the music and stuff like that. So, and highlights, dynamics. So I would have certain guys who I would trust. In the beginning, I used to do all the dynamics. Then I got to the stage where I said, lads, come up with some ideas. I'm giving you a half an hour. I'm going in here to the midsection. I'm going to sit around the table and I'm going to go through some stuff that I want to happen in this specific tune. You have a half an hour. You haven't done it in half an hour. He's doing it no more. I'm doing it. So I got to the stage where this all started to develop, where everybody had a responsibility, And this is not even looking at the maintenance of drums and sound. This is talking about the basic score, 4 parts on the table. And we have a rule. It doesn't stay there for a week. If you have to come down and put that music on the table after a week, it means you haven't looked at it all week. So if you read the newspaper on the way back from the shop And by the time you get to the house and you've had to read the front page, you should be able to put that paper down and tell your wife or somebody what
What the
happened
story?
last night.
Yeah.
The same with your music, it has to go straight in.
Awesome.
See when you're writing, see when you're talking about the scores and obviously staff notation following the piping type thing, right? Here's a question for you, right? See when you're wandering about doing the messages with your missus and all that, right?
Mm.
And do you ever think of something and you think, do you know what, that would be a great phrase. That would be a great phrase for this despair. That'd be a great phrase for a reel. Or do you actually always sit down and it's always the same sort of process of I'm going to listen to this chanter, the way it sounds of the chanter, or the way it sounds of the pipes, and I'm going to write to that? Or do you think, no, I've got this kind of phrase in my head and I want to express that?
But weirdly enough, I've never listened to a CD recording of another band in my life.
Yeah.
And if I get a tune that somebody else is playing, say a big tune like Lord Alec Kennedy, there's plenty of bands, big bands. Bobby Ray played it with the RUC, and Big Tom Brown played it with Bob Hall. They were the ones that made them iconic. Jim made the Highland Wedding a big tune, and people always, if the band decides to play the Highland Wedding, the first thing they'll do is they'll pull out Jim's score and start listening. That's the worst thing you can do. I want to, when I walk on that field, to have something that's mine. And when I say mine, the process is that with medley tunes, as Terry Now Allen would send me a tune and ask me what I think of it. My first job is to learn the tune, learn the story, the journey of the music as to where it starts and where it finishes. Is there two third parts in there? We always, when we write scores, you have an idea of what you want to start with. You're marching to the line. You want something that's strong and that has presence, and you want to not to put the kitchen sink into it, because it's like going in and seeing a car in a showrooms and it's orange. You say, "Geez, I'm going to buy that." Nobody has an orange car, and you buy it and you drive it onto the road, and all of a sudden you're looking around and every second car is orange. So I always try to, when I'm writing a score, is to try and see it, no matter what the phrase is, if it fits the tune and fits the spot, I'm going to put it in there. I've often gone down here, and we used to play a reel where there was harmonies over it, where the melody of the tune was playing in the background, but the melody on the harmony line was going da dee da dee da da dee da dum da dee da dee da dee dum. So I got the lads to hum that and play a score over it at the same time. So playing a rhythm like da 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 days da 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 things like that. We played a medley a couple of years ago, Dora McLeod, and I finished with finished with one big flam. They said, "All the players you have, why did you do that?" Because I can.
And I did it.
For one reason, for people like you to ask me that question. It's a talking point. And music is about talking points of drama, sad music. And like people have always said to me, like, grade one leading drummers come out, how's it go? Oh, we had a great run today. Best run we've had all season. Look at the results. 12th. I don't understand how I'm 12th. This is what, just because you're clean and it went well doesn't mean that you should be in the top 6.
Yeah.
Grade one, you're expected to be good. You're expected to be clean. You're expected to have the fundamental stuff right. It's the presentation of the music. Does it touch somebody? Does it make people, emotionally attached to the tunes? And that's where the top bands and the bottom half bands separate themselves musically.
I was going to say that it's like when you watch news guys or you watch Top 6, you always walk away taking away something from the performance. You go, "Oh, I really like that." I mean, you might not like some things, but you go, "Oh, I really like that." So it makes it a memorable performance. And then you walk around the park, and no offense to any other pipe bands, right? I mean, everybody's just doing their own thing, but then it's kind of wallpaper music, and then you'll get to grade one, and then you watch like some serious bands, and you go, "Oof, what they've done there's quite outstanding." So that is the I 100% agree with that.
When I
For the
was
listener.
getting into the world of pipe band and stuff, and coming from drum kit and playing rock and roll or whatever, and I'm listening to pipe band music and I'm trying to get a hang of what it is. I was
Right.
always listening to St. Laurence O'Toole because you've got that album Dawning of the Day. Do you
Yeah.
remember recording that?
Yeah. I haven't listened to it yet, but yeah, I
I
do.
was
Yeah.
wondering, you just said you don't listen to them. I'm like, ow. Were you
No.
singing the old triangle at the end as
I
well?
say I don't listen. I don't put it into the car and play it, but I've been in cars that it's been on, and people say, "Gee, I love that." Like that Dawn of the Day gives me goosebumps
Oh,
when
yeah.
Terry plays and then Alan comes in with the harmonies. I say, yeah. He says, the only part I ever played in that was the editing of the music when they have the 20 tracks and they're picking the 16 for the
Oh,
CD
right, yeah, yeah.
and making sure that this should be on the CD because of X, Y, and Z. But I've got the 3 albums here and I've not listened to one. Some of them have their iTunes. I don't do it. I'm going to do it all when I retire because I'll probably criticize it and say, "What
Yeah,
the
that's
fuck?"
it.
So,
We'll
but
do it
you're right.
again.
But the Dawn of the Day was a really good album. There was
Yeah,
some good albums, some good music in all of them, but to entertain
that's
people
it.
in a pipe band on stage for 2 hours is a tough task
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I suppose the fans and the supporters and competitors see the band on a competitive level on the day of a competition where every set you play is pristine. Then you've got to stand on stage and do that for 2 hours.
yeah.
Like it's pipe band music. There's only so far so much you can do with it. So that we're going to start seeing a couple of ideas, I'd say, coming into the bands over the next couple of years with different things.
That's that's one of the things, Stephen, is that we've spoke about this in the show, right? That no offense to pipe bands, I'm a massive lover of pipe bands, but there's a finite amount at the current level of where you're going with a pipe band. You've got this set and that's it, and then percussionally you're looking at things like, when you watch the Breton pipe, well, not Breton pipe bands, but Breton bands, and then their whole kind of rhythmic kind of the whole thing. Maybe it's the orange car, but throwing the sync at it, they've got like kind of all these range of drums,
amazing. Their
and
ensemble is amazing. Yeah.
it's fantastic. And there's a weird thing in my head that I'm thinking. I don't know if that could transpose into pipe bands, but you're thinking, look at what they're capable of doing, and it's almost not orchestral, but you know what I mean. It's like from a
Yeah.
percussive point of view, what they're
Mm.
doing is immense, and it's to be
Yeah. I think
applauded.
it's going to happen. I think we're going to end up in an ensemble, and it's going to be a 10-minute medley, and I think it's going to be a different format. But I think it's going to be baby steps before it. It's not going to be a straight in. Like this year, we had 5 police in Inverary cutting out their chanters from one reel into another. The whole
Yeah,
band just cuts, and that's a Brett Only thing where they cut them out and the bombards take over. Then we've got this now. Stephen is testing the water with introductions, playing one role and stuff like that. But there was talk of us having a concert set up in the arena, and it all depends on the background music board, what their plans are for pipe bands, because Inverary have tested it, and like when you read the rules, there's no rule says that you can't play one introduction role. No one says you can't cut your chanters out, And then we had Stephen testing the water again with playing four-stroke rough at the end of his medley when they're finished. The
yeah,
music stopped. Like 10 years ago, if I'd have done that, I'd have been done for not on from the ensemble judge for not finished the band not finishing together. So,
yeah,
you know, how is that going to be interpreted? It depends on the judge and it depends on the challenge that you put to these people. And you just have to keep asking. We're starting to ask the questions,
Mm.
basically, so we get the answers, I suppose, over time. Because I think the background behind the running of the pipe band's music board, the RSPBA, I think there's a bigger contingent starting to gather now with them all. If you've noticed last week that the amount of ensemble judges that are after being promoted, I think eventually you're going to have all the judges are going to be ensemble judges. There's not going to be pipes or drums anymore.
Yeah.
There mightn't even be drumming prizes anymore, which is, for me, is a sad day, because what drives me to go into the competitions after playing music is to find out if I'm the best drum corps on the day or the best drummer on the day.
100%.
And I think that
100%.
would be a sad day. But if you look at we'd one new drumming judge on the panel, and we had 12 or 13 new ensemble judges. I'm going, all the judges I want to see judging drumming are now doing ensemble. Like, who's going to be
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
the
yeah.
drumming? Like,
So
so
it's just, see, whilst you're talking about sound and all that kind of thing, obviously you're the Premier Ambassador, or Marching Ambassador, or whatever you call it. But you've had quite a long time with him, and it's Premier drums that you use. How would you describe your sound? How would, if I was a guy that never heard you before, how would you say, this is the sound I'm getting out my core, this is what I'm chasing? Because I think you've got such a kind of clean sound as a core. And I don't just mean like you're playing, because you're all clean players, but your actual sound that you achieve.
projection.
How do you manage that? I mean, how do you perceive you're getting the best out of your drum? That's, I suppose, I'm asking.
Well, it's subjective, because first of all, I launched a blackhead with Evans some years ago, when they came to me and said they wanted to get into the pipe band side of the business with Evans. And this is how the stick is developed with ProMark, because the Dario owned both companies. And it turns out that I said, yeah, okay, we'll pay you to design this head. Okay, that's great. It means I get to maybe pay for a holiday at the end of the year. This was 7 years ago, when, every finger you had in every pie determined on how good of a year you had financially. So I was asked to design this head, and first of all, the drums Premier drums have been around longer than everybody, as we all know, and every photograph from the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s were always, every band had Premier drums. And then we seen
the kids were mean too.
Yeah. So Pearl came in then, and Dante, they started messing around with a drum in the early 80s, late 80s, and then they got their foothold on a lighter drum, and I think acoustically the Premier drum is a better band drum, and I think the solo drum at the moment is a better, Andante is the better solo drum. Not because it's a better drum. I think acoustically, for small rooms, for indoor playing, it has a more subtle feel to like, the drum is, there's no doubt about it. It's one of the loudest instruments in the world. You don't need microphones around to hear it. You've got a guy sitting 2 feet away from you behind the table judging you in solo. So the Premier drum is so broad, and the sound is clarity is so big tonally, that it stands out, that the drum, it's not that it's flatter. If you want to talk about flat drums, go back into the 60s. There's no drums flat. There's just drums, or some people able to get higher pitch sounds out of drums than others. So the Premier drum for me as a band is probably the best band drum for outdoor playing. The likes of a pipe corps with 21 pipers, with a big groan sound, big chanter sound. Premier drums has the better carrying sound. How is that achieved? Some people use it, and Dante heads, Remo, have sort of fallen off the radar in the last couple of years with their heads. And now I've brought out this Evans head, and people say to me, don't like it. I'm like, okay, why? It's a little bit metallic. I'm like, have you heard anybody else in the field with that sound? No, that's my point. So it's not flat. It's not a bad sound. It's just probably not as dry and as powdery as the Andante Cortex sound.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit more. The snares are a little bit more responsive inside, and make the drum sound a little bit fuller and metallic, and like a glass table. It's like playing on a glass top. So I got hounded to change me heads by a couple of people. I won't mention names. And through COVID, it was got to do with the colour. Some people didn't like black heads. Like, who puts black heads on the drums? I do. Why? I designed the head colour. I didn't design the. They said they wanted to launch this head, and it needs to be black, because all the Evans heads across the board in DCI are all black. So they wanted it to be part of that family. I said I would do it under the conditions that in about 3 years' time we bring out a white version of it. So that was all grand. Took the head, put it on. People were going, oh, that's different. And over time,
Yeah.
nah, I don't. Cortec, yellow head, and then all of a sudden the elite head came out. So the white head now version of, and Dante had a yellow head, I had a black head, and some of the guys on Remos were playing white heads. So it ended up you knew by the colour what product you were playing. Now all of a sudden, Andante discovered that people wouldn't put yellow heads on their drums because they looked like shit. So he brought out a white head, right? Because Jing Chang, you might sell 200 sets of drums, but you'd sell fucking 10,000 drum heads.
Yeah.
I seen you playing a drum, well, two drums. It was on YouTube last night, right? So obviously I was boning up about you, right? And it was a 2019. I don't know where you were playing. Like, it was kind of Premier thing, right? And but the Premier drum you had, right? It was a black head. It was chrome, and the actual shell was like going from grey into black. It looked stupendous. So you're like playing Crazy Army on like a continental kind of fifing drum type thing, and you were playing this Premier drum, and it looked miraculous. By the way, it absolutely looked superb.
Yeah.
I was like, that is a
But
great looking drum. It was chrome finish, it's just. It popped right out of you, man. It was like
fiber wrap that we had on it. Those drums went to New Zealand. I had them drums for 4 years. And when we got and put them on them, they were a cracking looking drum. They're mean. When you walk, you took them out, it was like, we're going to win today. You know, that was the attitude.
Honestly, just like, as soon as you see them, you're like that. As soon as I was like, what, man? That is just banging.
Yeah. And just on the black heads, they were different, right? And the whole concept was to be different. We don't use PowerMax heads in our drums. They brought out the PowerMax heads for the bass and tenors because it was low maintenance. Put the head on, dampening sound is built in, just tune it to the note. What was the big problem? Every band in the field had the same sound. So that's when you start losing your identity and you can't identify the drum corps because every band sounds the same. And when I had the black heads, I got persistently prodded at. I actually got told if I played them at the Worlds that the guy that was judging doesn't like them. So I got rid of them. Because Jordan COVID, up until 4 weeks ago, when I changed from the black heads in 2000 and after COVID, 2000 and what was that? 2020. When was the first season back? 2021.
2021, aye. Would have been
21.
21, aye.
Haven't won a major since I took them off. People say to me, "Oh, what you do with the black heads?" I tell you what I did with them. I made a big mistake taking them off. Why? Because I haven't won it since I took them off.
Jeez.
So this was the first year now that we won something on the Cortec heads. We went on to them. Everyone was going that direction. But there's a surprise coming in a couple of weeks. I can't say too much.
Okay.
But something coming. But sound premiers for a band, Field Marshal Montgomery, Scottish Power, anyone that had a big drone sound, a big chanter sound. And I know a couple of guys who are in Dante, they play in Dante's and solos, top players. And they even went playing in a band the last couple of years, playing premiers. And they went, the difference in premiers in the band compared to Dante's. All the drums are good products, let me tell you. They're all very well made. The attention to detail and how they're made and the process, and obviously parts, shipping costs. The drum is being driven out of the market because it costs and all that kind of stuff. But it's horses for courses, really.
See how you're talking about the Pro Mark and the stick and all that. How did that come about? Was that solely because obviously of the adaptation of the head, and then you're like that? Do you know what? I need a stick to reflect that, or were you already thinking about changing and getting like a stick that would suit you? But you know what I mean? How did that come about? How did that happen?
I was approached by Alan Vader Drumsticks.
Oh yeah.
And he said he wanted to do a pipe band stick. No, I tell a lie. That's a lie. I wanted to bring out a stick, and Alan Vader did ring me, but it was after a phone call I had with a guy. I went to South Africa to teach, and there's a guy over there, Marshall Music, and the guy who's Johnny Marshall, who owned the shop. We was out for dinner one night. They sell Premier products, and I happened to tell him that I was interested in bringing out a stick, and that he said he was the world sales director for Vader. And I went, really? He says, yeah, and Zildjian and somebody else. Dane Marshall is the guy's name.
Mm-hmm.
That was the son. And he used to work for Vader, Alan Vader, and travels the world selling products to distributors and all that kind of stuff. And he said, hang on there, picked up his phone. At the dinner table, how are you, Alan? Dane here. Have a guy sit beside me here, Stephen Creighton, fantastic drummer, leading drummer for Laurence O'Toole. He's looking to make a stick. He sent you an email, but he hasn't had any response. Okay, right, I'll give you the details later. Took the phone and put it down. I said, who's that? That was Alan Vader. He says, going to get that stick made for you. And I went, what? I got home on the Monday, there was a big email. What stick do you want? What design? What's your plans? So I had a design. I had made my own stick. I'm a cabinet maker by trade. So I made a stick, and it was a tapered back end on it and an acorn head on it. But I had a specific thickness because I used to play with grips. So I wanted the stick to be a little bit thinner. So when I put the grips on, it brought a sort of a little bit bigger than what a normal stick would be, but not as big as if you put it on somebody else's stick. So the design was that I had a built-in grip, that the stick was actually tapered where you held it, and the stick grip would actually be flush on the stick, in the stick, a built-in stick grip. So he said, look, that's going to be difficult to do. We'll do samples. I didn't like them. So he sent all these other samples over, and the stick was really good. And a company here in Ireland were a distributor in Europe for Vader sticks, and they said, look, we'll take sole exclusivity on your stick. He says, here, we'll be able to dispatch it. So stick came, I was delighted with it. The only problem was, like every stick, you had low pitch sticks, medium pitch sticks, and 20% of them were all probably high pitch sticks. The next problem was the weights, you know, how heavy they were. Pipe band drummers now are using 55, 56 grams. Years ago, you used to go over to the World Solos, and Joe Noble would be in the band room. I was only a 15-year-old. We walk into the shop and he'd just throw a box of sticks up on the table and you had to go through them. Or if you didn't get that fix when you went over to the World Solos, you'd order them online. And it was like a shot in the dark. You could get 2 telegraph poles or you get 2 knitting needles. You didn't know what you were getting. And as a youngster, you probably didn't care as long as they felt all right. Everyone's gone now to pitch and weights and stuff like that. So what happened was, for the first 2 years, we sold nearly 8,500 pairs of sticks worldwide. Brought out 2 different colours, blue, red, 3 and green, blue, red, and green, and the naturals. We started going into the factory when we brought in, say, 2,000, and went through them all on a piece of marble, weighed them, and put them into boxes of 58 to 60 grams medium pitch to 52, 53 grams high pitched. And we had them all. The people ring and say, Stephen, we want to take your stick into stock here. Can you send us 200 pairs? Yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't give them all the perfect stick. I'd give them a mix, because we find with young kids that have undeveloped the power of their hands, that giving them a medium heavy pair of sticks help them develop their strength in their hands. So you wouldn't give them the perfect professional finished 55 gram stick. Yeah. You'd give them a medium 58, 59 gram stick, right? And then you'd have school bands that would buy for kids that were told they were playing drums, and they'd be there for 2 weeks and they'd end up with sticks in the bin. So I had to find a way going sort of 30, 40%, and whatever was left, you would dispatch as a batch of 200. But over time, there was big problems in Vader factory that the sticks started to get very inconsistent. And I was in the middle of developing the drum head with Dario and Evans. They had said they wanted to get into the pipe band more. And they said, who's making your stick? And I said, Vader. I said, can we have a go at making your stick? He says, we own ProMark. He says, ProMark will do your stick for you. And I said, all right, struggling with the consistency with Vader. So I gave him a stick and I said, give me something similar. So they changed the top of it from a sort of a quick back end on it to a rounded end. And they had a computer analyst guy to give me 3D drawings of the stick, of where it tapers and when it tapers, and about having the stick back end balance, that the stick sort of came back itself rather than falling forward. And then you had a nice big top sticking, similar to James, I suppose, in a way, that when it struck the drum, you had this forward motion, but it's all it's all technical bullshit in a lot of ways,
Yeah,
but you can only see the difference of it when you see the consistency. So I said, yeah, go and do it. And they said, what colours do you want? And I said, just natural and white. They said, white. I said, well, yeah, I think white would be good with the blackheads. People would want white, they're fresh looking. And a lot of the army guys, the
pop.
DCI guys, all use white sticks for
Yeah.
some of their the shows that they do, and they have to have as part of the uniform white gloves, white sticks. I said it would be another area that we could tap into.
Yeah.
Sticks wiped over. Sticks were. I got 50 pairs here to try out, and every pair was the same weight and the same pitch. Holy Jesus! Now,
Stephen.
and that wasn't just for me. People had told me that, when they ordered them, when we got the ball rolling, that the consistency was unreal.
Yeah.
We've hit a blip now over COVID because they had ordered sugar maple into the factory. They own the wood mills in Texas, ProMart. They supply all the dales to Vader. They supply all the dales to Big Vert. They own the wood mills, ProMart. So I ended up getting great consistency. But the problem was sugar maple was brought in over COVID. And the next batch of sticks, when production went back up and running in America, the next batch of sticks, the wood was that dried out, is that the sticks were all coming in very, very light. So there was no moisture in the stick. It's all moisture controlled. It's all part of the process, but they couldn't just throw out that sugar maple. They ran off batches of them, and they were around everywhere where there was, I wouldn't say a bad batch, but not as good as what it could have been. And we're only starting to see the consistency back in the stick again over the last couple of months, where they've ran out of their thing. But there's so much options out there now for people. Stephen brought out a stick, and the rest is history. Like just Eric Ward, Paul,
Stephen, playing kit, I've obviously got my retailers and stuff that I go to for whatever it is I'm buying. And as I started to get into pipe banding, I've come across these ProMark Stephen Creighton sticks. And I was like, oh, these look a bit weird. I had no idea what the difference would be between a 5A, 5B, and then a pipe band stick. And I was saying it's got Stephen Creighton written on it. So obviously I'm like, who's this Stephen Creighton guy? I jump online, do a bit of a Google, get the Dawning of the Day album out. And so naturally I bought them and still playing them today. Big fan.
Oh, good man. They brought out an active grip stick. They had this new chemical they were after designing. The Stephen pipe band stick. I see you wear grips. We're bringing out this new stick, and it actually looked very well. It was a black stick with yellow, the 2 yellow stripes on it with the signature. It looked really good. And they actually come over to do they shared a boot with Premier one of the years, and they brought over something like 300 pairs, and they sold them all. So they launched the stick, and I was getting royalties. So I was going nuts. People bought it because it was a new product. It was something different.
Yeah. I would have got it. 100%.
Put that stick down your sock, as pipe band drummers do.
Yeah.
This big woolly sock. It's a heat activated solution that's on it. So when you put the sticks down your sock and left them there on a sunny day, let's just say when you pull them out of your sock, you squeal like a pig because they stick to your skin. They stick to your skin. So people start to realise that you can't. But they were a great seller and still are.
It'd be good for the nerves, wouldn't it? When you got clammy hands and all that.
I still in my head use stick grips. I use the ProMark stick grips. I don't trust. I don't trust chemicals in my hands. Well, I don't really. I do have sweaty hands for indoor playing, but on outdoors when it's raining and it's cold, the active grip is not. So I think I just use the grips all the time now, and it's only when I'm under pressure, when you hit the age that I'm hitting, you end up, looking for all sorts of things to help you get through some performances. So stick grips.
Stevie, we're going to kind of wrap it up shortly, right? Because we want to kind of save some more for another chance at getting a bite of your cherry. But here's the thing, right? See if you weren't a pipe band drummer, right? For whatever reason, right? You didn't become the pipe band drummer guy. Is there anything that you think you'd have been kind of taken to? Is there anything that if you couldn't do pipe band drumming, what do you think would be your kind of shtick? What do you think you'd get out? Is there anything that floats your boat?
Yeah, I would have been probably a professional badminton player.
Is that what you're into? Badminton?
Well, I was at the age of 14. I was playing a senior level badminton.
Right.
And I could have represented Ireland in the Olympics
Jeez.
had I continued it. But my mother couldn't afford to send me to both, so one had to give, and that was
Oh.
to Edmonton. Yeah.
We're still
James,
using a traditional grip, like.
I'm going to tell you a weird thing, by the way. This is weird that you say badminton, right? So, see, when I was a kid, I was at the Holy Cross High School. I wasn't into my badminton. I was absolutely rotten.com, but I kind of liked it. But one of the things similarly was the expense of it, because to get a decent racket, do you know what I mean? Like sort of Carlton 5.5 or whatever. So it was like kind of tapered and all that, and they were really pricey.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
and it's similar to a drumstick idea, but it's obviously weight differential. So you don't want something that's like a big club. I can't remember. Carlton at the time was the kind of go-to kind of racket. And I remember saying to my mum, I was like, "This is the kind of racket she wants." It's just like, let me tell you something. You'll be lucky if you get a fishing rod. A short round it is a badminton racket. And you know what I mean? It's that kind of difficulty. It kind of leads me. It kind of like leads me on kind of weirdly that pipe band drumming. I'm not going to say we were dirt poor, but obviously didn't come from a lot of wealth. And so the great thing about pipe band drumming back in the day, so where I came from, it was kind of traditionally miners' welfares and kind of minor societies. And then they would be the kind of people that would have these kind of brass bands or pipe bands type thing. And you would go there and people would instruct you for free. No, not people would still instruct people for free, but and it was just kind of a kind of community-based ideal where you could go. I mean, maybe need to buy your sticks, but you would have, you'd either use a book or you'd get like just a big block of rubber. It wouldn't be as kind of, I know it sounds mental, but as monetarized as it is today. So, you know what I mean? Like, so the price of a pad, we get geared a pad. I wouldn't buy it, like, but somebody gave me the Rogue pad. It was like 80 odd quid, and pads are varying in prices for like 20, 25, 30, right up to kind of, you know what I mean? Kind of dear money if you've got like 4 kids and you've not got a lot of money coming in the house. I mean, these are expenses and things that need to kind of get considered.
My father used to put rubber up off a tyre and put it onto a block of.
Yeah,
that was our practice.
Nice,
100%. So
I mean, commercialised now, it's unreal.
But the weird thing is, Stevie, is that the commercialisation, it's a kind of double-edged weapon, right? So guys like yourself and other big fish that are in the pipe band world, it's a finite amount of people technically that are into the pipe band drumming type thing. So then you're only iconic to a certain amount of people. And then understand as well that you guys need to kind of get a return from it almost. So for the time that you're giving into your passion, there needs to be. I get how it's got to be monetarized in order to kind of take it forward and get that kind of professional scene. So I'm not criticizing it as such. I'm just saying it's an observation that obviously, But the good thing is I've noticed that, I don't know what it's like in your part of the world, but I've noticed as times went on, as I've got older, that there's more of a filtration in the schools. So, so like maybe I would say about 30 years ago, in like private schools, you would have like a pipe band, right? But then in like normal state kind of sludgy schools, you wouldn't. But now I've noticed that the primary schools will maybe have a drumming instructor in once, twice a week. And then I've noticed that, in high schools, so my wife teaches at Larbert High, they've got like a drumming instructor, they've got a drumming and pipe instructor, I think Grant's, I don't know. But anyway, so the point is that it's kind of filtered that way, where you go to school and you can get a lesson as opposed to going away, walking through the snow, fighting the Neds, laughing at you carrying a pipe band practice pad, getting filled in, boxing your way to the practice. Do you know what I mean? Things have changed. Things have improved as well,
Oh, they have definitely improved. Like you look at the worlds before COVID, like how glamorized it's gone. You had BBC, you had these state of the art stands, you had a market village where you walked through and between burgers and chips and beer and uniforms, and like you look at every band, you don't see Like years ago, you could see from a distance that your drumsticks had the lumps gone out of them. Every band is pristine and has, all the top quality stuff. There's definitely an attraction for kids to want to be in it again. And we've got the device of the iPhone, which is a bit of a nightmare. It's been abused from the sense of what it really was designed for. The likes of YouTube. When I was their age, if I wanted to hear a band, I had to go to a competition. I mean, because I lived in Ireland, I was never going to Scotland. My biggest thing was somebody gave me the Vale of Attle No Reservations CD that they picked up when they went to the World Pipe Band Championships in 1986 and brought it back and gave it to me as a present. Paul Turner. So I started, that was my only influence. I didn't know who Jim Kilpatrick was. I didn't know who Head were. I was 14, 15 years of age. I was just taught there was, and I get it because I went to America teaching in Jacksonville the last couple of years at one of the schools, and they introduced me, and nobody knew who I was. I'm going. I was just a drumming instructor for the week. So in their little world, they don't see that level.
Yeah.
Celebrity status from anybody.
I think the good news for guys like yourselves, team, is I think it with the internet and with the televised kind of performance of the worlds, etc. It's definitely it's going up in trajectory. It's definitely not going to. It's not going to stay the same. It's going to get bigger. It's got to.
Yeah, I'll be well gone down the road at that stage, Andy. I'll be. My plan was to retire 2 years ago, and it never happened. And funny enough,
you're not retiring, Stevie.
You wouldn't do it, surely.
It's not happening, man. No. You still got life in the old dog yet, man. Come on.
Well, there is. Well, because of my position in Premier as an artist, number one, I'm part of the product development team there now with Gear for Music, who own Premier. A couple of things going on at the moment, but as a player, I might have been in 30 finals, solo senior finals. I've been in the top 6 over 60% of that time. This year, at 53, I'm the leading drummer of the current Grade 1 World Champions. I'm the leading drummer of the current All-Ireland Drumming Champions, Grade 1. And after winning the All-Ireland Senior Solo Drumming, which I won first in 1993.
Yeah.
At the age of 8, I just turned 18. I beat Andrew Scullion in Old Bon and Tala for that title. And the judge at the time was Jim Baxter.
Yeah.
Last Saturday, I won the Senior All-Ireland Grade 1 drumming. And the judge that gave me the drumming was Jim Baxter. Right? So 41 years later, he's still giving me the senior level. So whether they deserved it or not is irrelevant. But there's only the World Solo Championships coming up now in 3 weeks' time.
I'm well aware.
I'm not going to win it because I probably should have won it in 94, 96 and 2004, I think it was, when I had some really, really, really good performances on the stage. But because I was Irish at the time, probably because I was happy to be in the final, some judges at the time were all grown up and developed around the Kilpatricks and the John Scullions and the Paul Turners and all of these celebrity players. Dead is what they were. Now that I'm in that position, unfortunately, all the judges on the panel are all half my age now, I think. And they're running with this. I had to keep reinventing myself as a player. I don't change for anybody. I have a style that I like, but I do try to take some of the. You only really see the difference when you see the likes of John Scullion playing now.
Do you know? I'm so glad you mentioned John Scullion, by the way, because that is a very innovative guy, an uncompromising drummer. I would describe him as somewhat, to a weird sort of way, a wee bit maligned, because I think some of the stuff that John Scullion was coming up with was that kind of left field or out the box that some people didn't really get what John was doing. And does that make sense? So I think in a weird sort of way, right? Just well, I know it's all about you, Stephen, but what I mean is in a weird sort of way that your John Scullion types is that sort of kind of school of drumming that maybe wasn't in the middle ground, it wasn't maybe safe. and the stuff that he was playing that maybe people want to get, and you're like, maybe that's because you can't get your hands around that. Maybe that's because you find that a wee bit uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? So
one of those guys that read on rudiments, and they were rudiment nut jobs. Eric Ward's another one. Eric had a pair of hands and he could play anything backwards. I wasn't wearing rudiments. I played the Mammy Daddy for 6 months, and I wasn't allowed to play a fucking flam until I had the Mammy Daddies off. But I don't practice. As I got older, I spent more on the phrases and developing musical rhythms and stuff like that. But these guys are John Scully and Eric Ward, even Andy, like technicians. They were way beyond their years that way. But music has changed. I would say simplified, and scores are simpler now. I think grade 2 drum course today would have beat the living shit out of grade 1 drum course 30 years ago. Like, so it is getting more refined, sound and technique and all that kind of stuff. And I've had to reinvent myself to sort of fit into this passage without looking like a John Scullion does now, or even an Eric Ward. Like Eric, you wanted to sit around a table with a drummer and learn stuff. Eric Ward was the man. I never really got the opportunity until I met him in Kansas. So some of these workshops that we do brought me with the likes of Eric. I've never been to a workshop as a young lad, couldn't afford it. When I got married, I was so focused on doing my own thing that I didn't want to be seen to be mimicking what they were doing. So when I went to Winter Storm and all these places, and you had John there, and you had Eric and John Fisher in America, you sit around and you go and just talk to them. The knowledge, it's like me having this conversation with you. I've now become that person. But in a way that, like, the words this year, I won the words. I'm 53 years of age. I still feel I have another 2 years definitely in that. I think what won us this year was we had a bit of everything, whereas some of the chorus have gone on to a different direction with their music and presentation. I had the weight and the clarity and the volume and the dynamics that people said, it's not my cup of tea, but Jesus, it's good. And that's why there's
100%
words on drums through the middle, you know. So, and I think that's why, I think Robert Madsen put a comment on Facebook last week from the All Ireland Solos. Thanks for keeping the flag flying for the seniors.
Brilliant.
Cheeky. I'm not as old as him, but I know what he meant. And when you look at Eric and you look at John, like, I've sat around the table, some of the stories they tell you about back in the day, and Alec Duddard. I've never heard Alec Duddard playing. And if you hear Alec Duddard playing Maggie Cameron on a recording and listen to somebody playing it now today, speed of it, the idiom of it, it's all completely changed. Like the Strathspey now playing is one of the biggest defaults, I think, with bands today, is that they don't understand the idiom, and it's costing some, especially in solos. Some of the drummers just don't get it, and we could talk about solos for another time. You could talk about, you know, playing on stage against players who have Stuart Little playing for them and Chris Armstrong and this other fantastic drummer coming in from a grade 2 band, every bit as good as any of us, and he's going in with a piper who's grade 2 level, and you know, his presentation is that it's not Stuart Little, it's a piper from a grade 2 band. And you know, the disadvantages of some of the drummers today that unfortunately they can't. I know a fellow who went in, could have won an All Ireland a couple of years ago, and the piper went into the wrong reel, hit the first note, and held the note for the whole reel because he didn't know what was coming next. Young fella didn't win the All Ireland because of his music. Like, there's loads of things that you could over the years. I never went over until later in life with Terry played for me a couple of times, and Alan has played a couple of times. But when you've got that professional presentation and intimidation, standing on stage with a Terry Tully in front of three drumming judges, it makes the big difference.
100%. So seeing that note, Stephen, right? Good luck for the Worlds in about 2 or 3 weeks' time, right? Hopefully I'll see you there. Hopefully I'll be able to buy you a pint, because this is a charity gig, because I can't pay any money for it. So you've done your care in the community bit for us, right? So I'll try and get you a pint, right? But here's another thing I'm going to say to you, just to finish this off, right? I've told Jason about the nectar comment, right? So on the phone, I says, send us your email. And you says, I need bother. And I was like, Nectar. And then you came back to me and went, who's Nectar? I'm like, I thought, is this guy getting in my head? Is he trying to mess with me, man? I'm like, Nectar as in good. Magic, this is good.
Oh, sorry.
Nectar.com. I'm like, what's going on? I was in the back of it. I was actually on the bus coming back from work, right? And as I seen it, the first thing I seen when you wrote back, who's Nectar? I was like that. And I started laughing out loud. Folk must have been like, that guy's obviously on something. He's followed the glue. Stay away from him, children. And then I was like, no, maybe he's trying to get in my head. Maybe he's trying to kind of make me second guess myself. No. I'm like, no, it's just Nectar. It's just good.
But, Nectar the hero. That's what we're doing. That's what we're running with.
Nectar, yeah. Very good. Very good.
Right, listen, so
anytime, if you want to do another one.
Thanks very much. It was really insightful, and thanks for coming on. So, Stevie, have a good morning.
You started off with one question. Which words was my favourite one? And we diverted away from it.
Ooh. That's what we do in the show, but what was your favourite one?
We have to know now.
First one.
The first one. Yeah. First cut is the deepest, baby.
Yeah.
But Roy Stewart to finish.
Yeah.
Take care, Stevie. Nice meeting you.
Take care. You too, buddies. Thanks, lads. Cheers, appreciate it.
Cheers, mate.
Bye.